Imagine waking up every day feeling tired, foggy, and unwell. And no matter what you change in your diet or lifestyle, nothing seems to help. For many people, the missing piece isn't what's on their plate, it's what's in their environment. You can't always see it, smell it, or even taste it, but mold and its byproducts, known as mycotoxins, can quietly infiltrate your home and your health.
Welcome back to Too Many Cooks in the Kitchen. Today, we're diving into a topic that's often hidden in plain sight: mold and mycotoxins. Most of us think of mold as something that lives on old bread or in bathroom walls. But what if it's in the air in your home, the food you eat, or the space you sleep in? Is quietly impacting your energy, mood, and long-term health.
Today, Lauren, who has recently been diving into this topic, sadly, because of her own personal experience, is going to cover everything that we really just need to know about how mycotoxins affect the body, why some people are more sensitive than others, and what steps that you can take to reclaim a healthy home and a clear mind. So get ready to learn, reflect, and maybe even rethink what clean living really means. Okay, Lauren, since you're in the hot seat on this week's episode, I'm going to start the questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready. I have been living this for quite a while. I would not consider myself an expert on the topic, and I am by no means a physician, but I would say my knowledge of mold and mycotoxins is more than the average human. So let's get started.
You truly live in it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So many people think of mold as just a visual or cosmetic issue. I certainly battle with that in my shower corners all the time. But it's often invisible and airborne. Can you explain what mycotoxins are, how they differ from ordinary mold spores, and why they can have such a profound effect on human health?
Well, mycotoxins, a lot of people believe that mold illness is caused by the spores, but that is incorrect. Mycotoxins are the byproduct chemicals put off by fungus to eliminate other fungus that it's competing with. They can be found in different types of fungus occurring in food, sorry, food like grains, nuts, coffee, and spices, as well as moisture damaged buildings. The main difference between mycotoxin and other types of mold spores are that they have the potential to cause immediate downstream health effects on humans and animals. Whereas mold spores, they can be harmful to people who have allergy to mold spores, but they're not going to cause the same type of damage that mold spores do. And mycotoxins are much, much smaller, and they can go much deeper into the body, into the bloodstream, and then travel all around your body and cause harmful effects all over the place. So,
Well, that is super interesting. I just learned something. I did not realize mycotoxins and spores are two separate things. Like one's like a thing that's like a, I don't know, a fume or whatever that the mycotoxin is or the fungus is emitting. And a spore is just the reproductive ability for the fungus to spread. I know I'm allergic to spores, that's for sure, but that's super interesting that I never thought of it that way, that we could have mold and you see it, but it can be emitting something that's even far more dangerous than the mold itself. Cool, but
exactly.
not.
Essentially, spores, like you were saying, are the reproductive, they're the little babies that the mold puts off in order to, you know, sustain life, to keep its life growing, but mycotoxins are essentially biological warfare against other types of fungus because it's always competing for space. So it's putting off, the mycotoxins in order to kill the other fungus that it's competing with. But but I have a diagram here of how spores and mycotoxins interact with the body. So spores, they they stop right about here. They don't get into the body as far as mycotoxins, but mycotoxins, they go in and through your bloodstream and all throughout the body.
So, like, mycotoxins are way smaller, obviously, because it's more like
Yeah.
a fume. That's interesting. Okay, cool. So, tell me more.
Well, mycotoxins can have a profound effect on the human body, not only for the symptoms they cause, such as acute poisoning, immune suppression, liver damage, and cancer, with symptoms ranging from fatigue to severe illness and beyond. And we'll get into more of the symptoms a little bit later in the episode. But they not only target all areas of the body, but exposure can come from many different sources through ingestion from the food you eat, inhalation, or contact to the skin. And to top it all off, all mold or no, to top it all off, mold exposure can often go undiagnosed because symptoms can be chalked up to many other types of illness. And because of this, they often go untreated due to misdiagnosis.
So, like, for you to bring it back to like on a personal level, like you had the eczema and you thought it was something else because as a chef, you wash your hands all the time. And, but I remember when you said you moved into that last apartment and within a month you had eczema and you've been a chef for a while and hadn't had that before. So that was kind of like a key to the diagnosis or the issue.
Yes. For me, eczema was one of my outward symptoms. I wasn't able to figure out what was causing it. I thought maybe it was just exhaustion or, overwork because I work a lot of hours and like you were saying, I wash my hands all the time, but nothing really had changed aside from moving into this new apartment. But I'm not, my first thought was not, oh, it's this apartment that's making me sick. That seemed crazy, to like blame the apartment on my health. But at the end of the day, that is what was causing the eczema and also a myriad of other symptoms that were internal and not outwardly visible. Um, but thanks to the eczema, I was able to visibly see that there was something going on inside my body that I was not able to pinpoint uh, a cause, but eventually when it did come out that there is mold in my apartment, which I found out because of a physical leak that happened, all the dots connected and I was like, it was a light bulb went off and I knew that that's what was causing this symptoms and all the other symptoms that I was experiencing.
Well, I'm glad that you are on the mend and no longer in that apartment. So let's move on to question 2. Mold exposure can cause a wide range of symptoms. We've kind of touched on a few of those from fatigue and brain fog to immune and respiratory issues. But how does mold affect the body, and why do some people, such as yourself, seem more sensitive or reactive than other people?
It is true that some people are more sensitive to mold than others. This is due to genetic susceptibility, which could be compromised immune system, allergy, or asthma. In the book that I'm going to talk about a little bit later in the episode, Dr. Jill Krista, the author of the book, talks about how these people are like canaries in the mine. They experience symptoms more or prior to other people who have less sensitivity to the mold, and it's like, the canary in the mine, when they stopped chirping or singing, they died. And so it was a sign that everyone else in the mine needed to get out. And so the people who are more sensitive, they're going to start to experience symptoms quicker than everybody else. And it's not just in your head, it is a physical thing. And everybody should begin to take notice and take steps to treat or, remediate the mold. Um, but it is also estimated that roughly 25 to 60% of the population has the HLA gene, which makes them less able to eliminate mycotoxins, causing them to accumulate in the body and more likely to develop a chronic inflammatory immune response. But it is a known symptom where everything in your body is basically becoming inflamed. Um, Mold can affect the body in many ways, and the symptoms one experiences may vary by the type of mycotoxin exposure and therefore can vary from person to person. And even within that, people experiencing the same mycotoxin exposure will present with different symptoms. So it's not one of those things that oh, you were exposed to aflatoxin, which is what I was exposed to. Um, you're gonna always present with eczema and fatigue. Somebody else living in the same building as me could have had respiratory issues, um, sinus problems, all that kind of stuff. So it's not straightforward.
Right, so that seems like a really hard mystery to solve. So I guess if you are kind of, let's just say you've got all of these or a few things that are weird or new symptoms that you haven't dealt with before, and your location or situation has changed. So if you've been living in the same exact house for like 20 years and you now have new symptoms, you either have a new leak and fungus that is now crept up, or it is like hay fever or some other environmental thing and not necessarily where you live. Maybe it's where you work. Who knows,
Exactly.
right? Um yeah, so like how then, okay, someone experiences this, like what do they do? Like is there a test for it?
There are tests for mold. The thing about internal mold tests is they're not always accurate, and insurance more often than not does not cover them, so you're paying for it out of pocket. But there's a few different tests that you can do. You can have a urine test, a blood test, or a stool test done. There are other types of testing beyond those, but I'm not super familiar with them. um but I would say if you suspect that you have mold poisoning, that the book that I'm going to share with you guys has a very good questionnaire that goes through symptoms and all different kinds of things, and it will tell you by the end of the questionnaire you if it's probable that you do have mold poisoning or mycotoxin poisoning. So, and then you can proceed from there and reach out to a doctor who specializes in mold.
So it does seem like, okay, where we live or where we are inhabiting, and most of the time we're inside in some location that could potentially have it. So, what are some common ways that mold grows unnoticed in homes? I mean, it was in your place and you didn't find out except for when you had the leak and water coming down through your ceiling, right? But it was there, and I'd been to that apartment and it didn't look like there was any mold growing anywhere. So, what are some red flags that someone can look for beyond the visible mold spots that we have all seen or musty smells that if you go into someone's old basement? What are some other things that you need to look for? Because maybe those aren't just the thing that everyone will see.
Well, mold is very sneaky. It can grow unseen and undetected in your house or apartment or even where you work. Um, in many areas, it often thrives before you even know that it's there. Common problem areas are inside walls, underneath carpets, and inside HVAC systems. If you notice in your home any of the following: visible water damage, leaks, bubbling or peeling paint, stains or discoloration on walls or ceilings, and a persistent musty smell, it may be prudent to reach out to a mold remediation expert for testing. Additionally, if you have any of the following symptoms upon entering or spending time in your home or work: frequent headaches, fatigue, unexplained allergy symptoms, new allergy symptoms, because mold can cause you to develop new allergies that you've never experienced before. It may be a sign of mold and that testing should occur. And mold can grow in as little to 24 to 48 hours in a moist and warm environment. So if you notice a leak or water damage in your home, I would highly recommend reaching out to a professional in mold remediation. And that being said, when or if you experience or find out that your home has mold, it is very important that a professional takes care of it because, one, if you try doing it yourself, you're more than like if you're already experiencing symptoms, they're just going to exacerbate because there are so many precautions that these people take in order to make sure that they're not being exposed to the toxic mold. And often, if you just do it yourself, the mold is going to return. And even with professional intervention, it is possible that the mold problem will return. And also, just because you remediate the mold in your house, it will eliminate spores, but it doesn't necessarily eliminate mycotoxins because mycotoxins are in the air. So it's not just as simple as getting rid of the mold problem. You have to, yes, it is super important to take care of the mold in your home, but other things will need to be done in order to actually, like, clean the space, clean the air to eliminate all the mycotoxins.
So, an interesting question just came to my mind would be like, let's say I'm living in an apartment and my apartment doesn't have any mold and my apartment doesn't have like leaks or anything. Like your building that you were in, what it had 3 stories, it had multiple apartment complex areas within it. So if you have mold, would those mycotoxins like travel through the wall and maybe affect someone else, even if they don't necessarily have quote unquote mold growing in their location? Is that
I don't
possible?
know that I believe so. I mean, I'm not an expert. I'm not a professional mold remediation expert. But just based on my knowledge, I would say that it is likely that even though other units in the building that I was living in did not necessarily have mold growing in them, those people, I believe, were still being exposed to mycotoxins because the the AC units, they're all like all the vents and everything in the building are connected. So the air from my apartment, the
Ah,
mycotoxins
yes.
that are being spread in my apartment, it's going to get sucked up into this HVAC thing and then spread all throughout the building. So I would say it's
That's
likely that
interesting. So, I mean, that's certainly something that would be, I don't know, a can of worms to open if you have to go through that. But don't make the assumption that it's not in your place if you're in maybe an apartment building and you don't have mold. So wow, that's a lot. So, okay, let's just say now you've you identify mold in your apartment or your place of living or even work. Well, work is easy or not, maybe not, 'cause you would likely need to find a new job or hopefully work with your boss to remediate the problem. But let's say you are able to move, like you were fortunate enough to be able to move out of the situation, but I would think that that's super important that you don't end up in a similar situation, right? So is there a way to test prior to moving in? Like you're gonna either buy a house or you're moving into an apartment and you're able to test and maybe like is it super expensive to get a basic baseline test for if there is, mold or mycotoxins
Mhm.
in the place?
Well, I and I'm just going to talk about my experience here. In my experience, when I paid for the mold test, from a remediation expert, it was $450 just for the initial test. They did, I believe, four samples, three inside the apartment and then one outside just to like get a baseline. And I mean, $450, like that's not a ton of money, but it's also like it's not super affordable. But, if you're someone who has been experiencing symptoms from mold poisoning, personally, I would pay that again to have reassurance that the place I was moving into did not have that issue. Luckily, I found, uh the people that I'm renting from, they had just built this house, and so it was a new construction. I don't have to worry about previous mold, damage or anything like that. But reaching out to an expert is definitely the way to go. I don't know of any just, like, tests you could order online and swab and, like, send them. Like, I don't think there's anything like that that I'm aware of. I mean, it's possible, but I don't think so.
Well, and you would have to know what you're doing. So even though you get a
Exactly.
kit, right, you've got to know where to swab, how to do it correctly so you don't introduce other problems. So what it boils down to is consult with someone who really knows exactly how to deal with this because they could probably give you just information even when they're in there doing the test about things that you could do to help remediate that problem um if it does
Mhm.
come up like that. So you've got all of this and okay, now you've got mold, you've been exposed to mold. So that sucks, right? But is there a path to recovery? So once it's been identified, and what does that look like? Um what not necessarily let's not focus so much on the home, although there might be a few things that are simple stuff if you only have a leak in a small area, like say under the sink or whatever. Um, and then can you share your approach to supporting the detoxification, rebuilding the resilience back for yourself and creating now, because you've already shared a little, a healthy indoor environment long term for yourself or for anyone else going through this?
Yes. Well, I would say, building wise, I'm not the expert, and I have said quite a few times already that when it comes to mold, just contact an expert. They know what to do. It might, cost a pretty penny, but at the end of the day, it is worth the peace of mind just knowing that the problem is taken care of, and that you're not going to become more sick by trying to deal with that problem on your own. Um, so I'm going to talk a little bit about my own personal journey with trying to heal from mold toxicity. And it has been a rocky road, not the ice cream. Unfortunately, I wish it was. I wish it was that delicious. Um,
Yeah, wouldn't it be great?
um, yeah, so I was living in this apartment for about 9, 10 months, and in this moldy environment, unbeknownst to me, um, becoming sicker for what I thought was just like no reason at all. Once I finally found out that it was mold, I started taking the necessary precautions to begin to heal. Um, and the biggest thing with that is, and with anyone, is removing yourself from the mold, getting away from it. You cannot begin to detox and heal if you are continually being exposed to that moldy environment. So for me, that meant moving out and finding a new apartment, which I'm very thankful to be living in, a brand new apartment that has no mold, um, and just trying to detox the body. There are a few things you can do, and I would recommend anybody to reach out to a doctor that specializes in mold and environmental toxins, um, preferably some kind of functional or naturopathic doctor. Um, Personally, that's what I feel most comfortable with. I don't know of conventional doctors that really um practice in or are experts in mold. But they're going to create, they're going to get you tested, figure out what type of mold you have been exposed to or mycotoxins that are in your body, and they'll create a treatment plan from there. So for me, I had very high levels of aflatoxin in my system. That is a mycotoxin that targets all areas of the body, can cause all kinds of different symptoms, the worst of which being, if left untreated, cancer down the road. So I'm very hopeful that I can eliminate it from my body so that that does not become a problem for me in the future. And my
Yeah,
treatment plan,
I would
yeah,
say I kinda hope that too. That would
yeah,
be
me
bad.
too. So my treatment plan involves supporting my liver, taking supplements to help support my liver to detox. My doctor prescribed me with a castor oil pack that I wear, which helps the liver do its work. I'm also taking binders, like there are a lot of different types of natural binders, like activated charcoal, zeolite, bentonite clay, all kinds of. I have a binder that has it's a pill that I take, and you want to take it on an empty stomach beginning of the day, drink a lot of water with it because this is essentially going to help all the toxins in your body. It's going to bind to this thing and then flush it out. So you want to make sure you're drinking enough water. Also sweating, having a sauna protocol is a huge thing for me. I am looking into finding a sauna that I can go to on a regular basis. It's not something that's like super readily available in my area, but I practice hot yoga fairly regularly, and sweating out the toxins is another way to help eliminate the whatever is harming you, eliminating it from your body. And then also dietary wise, I've been staying away from foods that are high in mold potentially, such as grains like wheat, corn, oatmeal. I am really just eating mostly lean protein and vegetables and fruits. And some fruits also can be high contributors to mold in the body, especially from their sugar content. And if you already have mold in your body, eating a lot of sugar can help feed that thing. And a lot of people who have mold toxicity or mold poisoning, they will crave carbohydrates and sugar because the mold in your body is like it's like begging for these things. So, um it's really important to try to eliminate those from your diet altogether.
That's super interesting. I would have never thought like, you know, I crave sugar, but I'm not tired, so maybe that's the thing.
Most people
I don't have
do.
the other symptoms. Right. It's the gut microbiome that wants it, but I mean, they are microbes, and a fungal thing is kind of in that same vein. So that I on its surface, like it makes some interesting sense. So for let's say someone who like myself, like I can't go into a sauna anymore because of my heart condition, right?
Mm,
So if I were to have that issue, like, but you don't have to do all of them. At least if you're doing some of these, it's still going to help, correct? Or do you need to
yes.
do most of them? Is it kind of like any little bit?
Well, I think everything you can do will help to eliminate the mycotoxins, but the biggest thing is like this is not a linear journey and it is not something that happens overnight. It is a long process detoxing these things from your body. I once read that it can take anywhere from 6 months to 2 years to fully eliminate mycotoxins from your body. I don't know if that is 100% accurate, but from my experience, like I am out of the apartment that had the mold. I've been out of there for several months now, and I'm still experiencing symptoms. I still have eczema on different parts of my body. And I still experience fatigue and at times brain fog and other symptoms. So, some days are better than others, some days are worse than others. But I think that everything you can do and stacking these things on top of each other, like, it's only going to benefit you, but I don't think that it's like, in your case, mom, you're not able to go into the sauna, but if there are other things you can do to induce sweating to help eliminate toxins that way, like, um yeah.
So if I went out for a run or I was like working outside in the garden sweating, and all I have to do is
Exactly.
go outside in the summer in North Carolina, and I don't have to do anything, and I would sweat. So, okay,
Exactly.
good to know. Good to know. Wow, this has been super, super informative for the mycotoxins. So I'm pretty much out of questions other than just like any other words of wisdom or things that you want to kind of um, touch on that we haven't already done.
Um, I would say that if this is something that you're experiencing and uh, something you may suspect but don't have confirmation of yet, it's not in your head. For months and months, I was like, I'm going crazy. Like, I don't know what's wrong with me, but there's something. I don't know what the problem is because nothing outwardly in my life has changed. Um, it's not in your head. There is something going on, and, it may not necessarily be old, but reaching out to somebody who specializes in environmental toxins is the first step in trying to heal. Mold and Lyme disease can present with a lot of the same symptoms, and it can also overlap. So, just don't give up. It will get better. It might take a while, but you will feel better, I promise you. And like I said previously, it's not a linear journey. Some days you'll feel better than others, but healing is happening. And often with mycotoxin or chemical die off in the body, you can feel worse before you feel better. So just don't lose hope. It will get better. It will get
Sounds like keeping positive or focusing on that kind of growth mindset is going to be pretty important. Trying to not spiral into the negativity of like everything sucks and you're just going, it's not going to help for sure. And as I've always passed on to you, focus on the things you can change and don't try to focus on the things that you have no control over. So, like the apartment situation, when you were going through that, it's like, okay, right now, today, you can't change that. However, you can make steps in either looking for a new apartment, or like you consulted a lawyer, you got to the functional medicine, you got the mold test. So there were things you couldn't do, but it was really important that you had things that you could do and focus on those things to move forward.
During the questioning, I may have glazed over some of the common symptoms of mycotoxin exposure, so I'm just going to run it back a little bit and list off some of those for you guys. So that way, if are experiencing many or some of these symptoms, you can perhaps begin getting to the bottom of the issue. And those would be sneezing, runny nose, coughing, itchy, watery eyes, throat irritation, skin rashes, headaches, fatigue, um, brain fog, body aches, ranging from less to more serious. And there's many more because mycotoxins can target all different areas of the body. These were just a few of them, the most common, noticeable ones. So, like I was saying earlier, this book here is a great tool for diagnosing and figuring out how to treat your mold toxicity or mold symptoms. It is called Break the Mold by Dr. Jill Krista, and she is a naturopathic doctor who specializes in mold. This book is great. It's been so informative. There's a questionnaire in it that can help you to figure out if you have or are experiencing symptoms due to mold. She talks a lot about, she gives you tons of information about how mycotoxins work, how they target the body, and also gives you tons of information about treating your mold from there. So I highly recommend this book. I picked it up on Amazon. I did not see it at a store near me. And yeah, it's been very helpful and I highly recommend it.
Well, the cool thing is we're going to drop the information about that book in the show notes. So if you didn't
Exactly.
catch that, or like, let's say you're driving, pop back in, grab the show notes, look at that. We're always going to have the book recommendation that goes with the episode in the show notes. We will also have the links to other things that might be helpful that we think
Yes,
may be
exactly.
informative for you.
I will also link the internal mold tests that you can do from Total Tox testing or something like that. I forget the exact name. But it will bring you right to the link to where you can order your at-home test to help you better figure out if you are experiencing symptoms from mold toxicity.
Oh, that's going to be really awesome to go along with this episode. So, we have covered our topic, we have covered our book, and we even introduced next episode. But to tie this all together, we need to do one final thing. And
A
you know
food
what it is,
fight.
Lauren. Yeah! So, what is the food item for this week?
Food item for this week is asparagus. And it goes very well in line with this video because one of the foods that can help promote healing from mold toxicity are leafy greens and green vegetables and things like that. So asparagus is a great thing to eat when you're trying to heal from mold toxicity. I'm excited to get into it.
Fantastic. I
Yeah.
love me some asparagus. And because we are trying to keep these recipes as seasonal as possible, obviously, if you're listening to this episode, it's some other time. But when we're recording it, we are keeping the recipes in season as much as possible. Obviously, depending on where you live. But asparagus is going to start hitting that market pretty soon. We're recording this in January. This episode will actually air in February. Should be that is the beginning of the real peak season for asparagus to start popping in. I know mine will start popping out of the ground here in around February, March as things start to grow. So, looking forward to the food fight. We get to see who comes out on top.
I'll see you in the kitchen.
Lauren's recipe, asparagus almondine, came together very simply. You're snapping off the ends of the asparagus. You can peel it, but this thin stuff I decided not to. You're blanching it. You're shocking it in some ice water. It's a pro tip for actually being able to have some asparagus that's ready to go and ready to cook. So you can use this for many other vegetables as well. You saute it in a pan, then you're going to add on the roasted almonds, and they're good. And Stefan says, pretty good. It's edible. I like the bright flavor of it. I really enjoy the kind of simplicity of the dish and how quickly it came together. We had it with a flat iron steak, so really paired well with that. But there you go. It's good. I think it needs a little bit of something, but I don't know what. I'm kind of a roasted asparagus gal, so I think this was great. And it would go very well with a nice as a side to any dish. So you all should try it. Lauren, nice job.
Hi guys, welcome back to my kitchen. For today, I have made my mom's cream of asparagus and shrimp soup. I just finished cooking it, so I'm gonna give it a try. My initial thoughts on this recipe are that it's a bit different. I'm not typically a big fan of seafood in soup unless it's like a chowder or something like that where it's supposed to be there, but it smelled really good while I was cooking, so let's give it a try. Well, I didn't get any shrimp in that bite, but it's not overtly shrimpy, even though it's made with mostly a shrimp stock and cream. I'm gonna go in for bite 2. Well, I think the shrimp really works in it. It's very mild and doesn't take over the whole thing. Like, it's definitely more of an asparagus soup with the shrimp complement, which I think is really good. I was worried it was just gonna be like in your face shrimp, but it's not. It's like asparagus and shrimp, you know? Like just like a little like whisper of shrimp. You get the nice texture from the shrimp in the soup, because otherwise it would just be all cream, which I don't mind, like a cream soup, but the texture is a nice addition. So I like it. Good job, Mom. Kudos. Making my mom's asparagus soup recipe, I had to make a few changes from what her recipe called for. I don't have an oven, so instead of roasting my asparagus, I ended up cooking them in my cast iron pan to give them that caramelized flavor. I also ended up sweating my onions in the butter to make them translucent, and then after that I added the flour to make the roux. This is just how I learned in culinary school. And making the shrimp broth, I doubled the amount of shrimp shells I used because I had gotten extra shrimp to make for myself later for dinner. So I think this made for a more developed shrimp flavor in the soup, but definitely isn't necessary. It's just what I did. And those were all the minor changes that I made from my mom's recipe. All right, thank you guys for coming to my kitchen. I'll see you next week in here for some nice pomegranate recipes. Bye.
That's it for my kitchen this week.
But don't hang up your aprons just yet. Next time we're diving into, drumroll please, goal setting,
where I will be interrogated. I hope I finally win the food fight.
Not likely, but Maybe. We'll see you next time. Don't forget to check us out on Instagram at 2 Cooks Podcast. That's the number 2 Cooks Podcast. And in our link tree, you can find all the recipes to make them yourself. And once you do, don't forget to share them and tag us and let us know what you think. We'll see you next time.
Don't forget to submit any ideas that you have for a food fight. I mean, a recipe for us to cover. Any food items we're super excited about, because then we can throw it at each other and see who comes out on top. See you next time. Bye.
Bye. Happy cooking.